Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ace's Media Mayhem. I am your host, Ace, and I thank you for joining me for another movie review. Today, we will be doing things a little bit differently, as I have invited a good friend of mine, Janeway, to help me out with this combined movie review. And the movie in question is going to be the romantic comedy starring Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez, Marry Me. Now, as this will be our first time doing a combined movie review, we're still a little bit newbie about it. But please, enjoy. And now, joining me for a joint review of the film Marry Me, released this past month, we have a good friend of mine and fellow gamer, Lieutenant Janeway. Janeway, thank you so much for joining me on this episode for a joint review.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first off, let us talk about the story of Marry Me. Marry Me, as we both know, is the story of a famous pop star who is doing a joint concert with her fiance to promote their hit single, or duet, Marry Me, and they were planning to get married on stage. However, due to the pressures of stardom, the fiance does the unthinkable, and the pop star decides to also do the unthinkable. She marries someone completely out of the blue from the audience. So now the story now takes a very interesting turn of not only her learning more about herself, but also what is it like to find love. So, in my opinion, for the story, I felt that it was a great choice of content to bring to the silver screen.
In my point of view, I totally agree. You don't get celebs marrying normal people. I mean, all regular people, fans would always like to end up marrying their celeb. So I think the content is excellent.
Now, I would like to point out that this film does come from original written content by Bobby Crosby, who wrote the original Marry Me graphic novel back in 2006, and it ended in 2015. Did you happen to have a chance to read the graphic novel?
Yes, I did.
And what was your thoughts about it?
It was very fun to read. Comics being comics.
Now,
Can't help but loving comics.
Absolutely true. And when you think about transitioning from a book content to films, there are some drastic or not so drastic changes that have to be made. What were your thoughts about the changes that were made for the book to film? Did it help or did it hurt?
It helped a lot because the majority of the content came from the comic. Not all of it, but the majority of it. I mean, keeping it as it was and moving it from book or comic, however you want to call it, to film is normally hard, but I think they transitioned it perfectly.
They definitely kept the story intact, but they also had to remove a good portion of said story and change it to reflect more realistic times, such as when you look at the comic, you have the pop star doing a lot of different charity events, and she actually takes her fiance or husband over to Africa to where she meets one of her exes, which is another thing. The pop star in the comic had a lot of exes. In the movie, she only had one fiance. What do you think about the changes to the characters that were done between the book and film?
Well, considering all the exes that the pop star had in the comic, was a little bit too much. It made absolutely, bouncing back and forth, back and forth. I think when they toned it down a lot regarding that, it made it more simpler to understand the story. considering how much it bounced around and changing it, it was more of a streamlined approach to it.
For the movie.
Yes,
Mm. I also like the fact that instead of having the pop star's, I do believe, sister or friend being pregnant and having her be a big part of the story, I felt that the story got stronger when you had to focus primarily on a small central group that included the pop star, the suddenly to be husband, the cheating fiance, and the manager. The bonus was the kid. That was a great bonus. I was not expecting there to be a kid suddenly thrown into that mix.
I agree. There's a really good kick to it.
It's very difficult when you think about it. That especially in real life, having like a father figure who is trying to raise a single daughter. What do you think about having Hollywood giving a little bit more realism to the story?
I think it was a great idea. I mean, the comic was good and all, but when you try to understand each step of the life of the pop star, transitioning it to a film was a perfect idea. Cutting it down, editing it, filming it was a perfect thing to do.
Were there any changes to the story that you felt needed to not have happened, or perhaps something that was kept from the original story that you felt didn't need that?
I mean, backstage at the concert, I think I guess seeing it on like the cell phone footage or and the way she got ticked off way before she went on stage. I think it was a little bit too much, but I mean, I guess it had to happen like that in a way that in order for the movie to progress, I guess it needed to happen. But I guess the slap in the face of her fiance was okay. I could have thought she should have done it more, especially for a cheating fiance.
Hmm. And also, I think when you consider what happens in our world today, having the news being popped up suddenly on a social media program that basically just informs the world instantly within seconds that, hey, this is happening, and suddenly you realize, oh, this is not gonna be good. Is kind of the feeling that I got from Kat when she was looking at the phone, like, oh, my dream is dashed, and then everyone's going suddenly going to be talking about this rather than that. And now for Kat, the one thing that I liked about the story for Kat was that moment of realization on Jimmy Kimmel's show of who she wrote the second song for, the one that literally climbed its way up to the charts all on her own, which truly is a great achievement, especially when you consider how the world perceives women today. Now, I do hate to bring up this question, but I must ask, what are your thoughts about that particular moment, about the climb to the top and then that moment of realization?
I think have the way she did it um was good because it needs women needs to be more represented in a positive light instead of like she did this. I think it's hard for a woman to get ahead. People would think, oh, she did this because of like they told her to do it. A woman's perspective is wanting to be known that her views matter in society.
That is a very excellent point. let us step away from the story for a moment and talk about the all star cast of actors who were a part of this film. We have actresses and actors who have played their parts, and I think brilliantly, such as Chloe Coleman as the child Lou, Sarah Silverman as that really spunky friend Parker, John Bradley played the concerned agent Colin, Baluma was the pop star Bastion. Owen Wilson, the comedic genius, doing a wonderful kind of comedic drama turn as Charlie, and then superstar Jennifer Lopez as Kat. Now, what did you think about how they played their roles?
Let's start off with the top.
All right.
Can't go any better than casting a triple threat in Jennifer Lopez. She could sing, she could dance, she could act. A triple threat. Can't go wrong. Owen Wilson, on that hand, people would think he's a comedian, right? But him to switch from a comedy to a drama was kind of interesting and unexpected, in my point of view. Sarah Silverman, she played herself in a way because she's spunky, firecracker.
Spunky firecracker. you call her a spunky firecracker. Well, if we actually look at Sarah Silverman's past roles, that's actually, I think, a very good, accurate line of thought for how to describe her. After all, you may know her as the little spunky, fast-paced driver Vanellope from the Wreck-It Ralph movies. She also appeared in School of Rock. She was actually Patty DeMarco. So she got to rock out alongside Jack Black in that movie. So that is an accurate description. She is spunky. Jennifer Lopez, I mean, that is superstar material. I do see her being a perfect fit. I wouldn't call it like a perfect fit. I do believe that some people could argue that there are other female pop stars who could have fit the role, but their acting may not have been as clean and fluid as Jennifer Lopez. I mean, let's look at some female superstars like Alicia Keys, Jennifer Hudson, Scarlett Johansson, Taylor Swift, and Selena Gomez, just to name a few of them. But Jennifer Lopez, as you said, is a triple threat. She can sing, she can dance, she can act, and it shows in the roles that she's been in, such as her role as Marisa Ventura in the hit comedy film Made in Manhattan, or perhaps one of her more stronger roles as performing as the late great Texas-born Tejano singer Selena in the self-titled film about her life. And then let us not forget her role alongside Matthew McConaughey in the film The Wedding Planner, where she broke the number one rule about being a wedding planner: don't fall in love with the groom. And of course, let us think about Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson, a star who does great in comedy, but also does exceptional in comedic drama. Of course, we know him for his well-known role as Lightning McQueen in Cars, but he's also played slightly more serious roles such as Greg Whittle in Bliss, Nate in Wonder. He was Morbius in Loki, the Disney Plus series. He also was Hansel in Zoolander, Supermodel. We also have to think about in the film No Escape, he was Jack Dyer.
And don't forget him in Night at the Museum.
Oh, that's right, where he was the cowboy. Oh, and Shanghai Nights and Shanghai Noon, where he was
Jackie
alongside
Chan.
Jackie Chan. And his actually his solo one as Drillbit Taylor, the bodyguard for hire. Do you think that Hollywood had potential other choices for people to play the roles that they did, or do you think that Hollywood got it right on the money for the most part?
I think they got it right at the most part because the majority of the actors are either directing themselves or doing other projects already. I mean, considering it was COVID, it was a great way to stay true to the story and all that. They got it perfect regarding casting.
Mhm. And also, we cannot forget that this movie is also historic in its own nature, where it is the first movie based on an American webcomic to hit the silver screen. We've had comics being made into movies, but we've never had a webcomic, an American webcomic, made into a movie. Let us talk about music, if I may. The music that was in Marry Me. As we saw in the film, music played a big part in telling the story for Cat and Charlie. So, what did you think about the choice of music that they had with the Latin American music and the also the songs that they did?
Considering Jennifer Lopez as like I said before, as a singer and a Latin singer to boot, the beat of the some of the songs were up tempoed, not just a four count beat. It was higher than that. I mean, it was great. I'm surprised they're not on the Billboard charts.
Ah, yes. And and you are right, we will need to talk about that a little bit later. So, amongst the songs that were in the film, we have the song Marry Me, which was sung by Jennifer Lopez and Manuela, and as well as On My Way, sung solo by Jennifer Lopez. The songs were the lyrics fit the story that was being told in the film, where Marry Me was a declaration of, at the time, their support for one another and asking each other to marry me. While On My Way, I felt, was Kat's way of trying to break free from this illusion that she built around herself.
Well, it's it being a song for after, after breaking free from her fiance. It was more of a statement in a way. It's also used to get back to Charlie in the movie. It's used. She's away from Charlie. She wants to get back to him, and she sings it through her journey to get to where he is, which is a perfect way of like she's at one point of her life, and then she's like, I need to get back to him. I love him. I want to get back to him. So those songs are magnificent, magnificently done, and is point on the target to where they are in the story.
Mm-hmm. The switch for Marry Me in the uh, close to the climax of the film, where they actually did the ballad version of Marry Me, it felt just a little bit off to me. I felt that it was forced in terms of the characters because they both knew that it's hard to come back from what has happened, and both Bastion felt certain that this was a way to win Kat back. And Kat, I felt just as she was singing it, felt kind of on that edge, on the precipice of a cliff. Like she didn't know where she wanted to go.
Agree.
And now let us talk about how other people have reviewed the films. Now, for this one, we're going to look at one of my favorite resources, RottenTomatoes.com, because I know that reactions are varied across all forms of media. One of the things that I like about reviews, especially when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes, is that it looks at the audience score and the critic score. Now, critics have largely been negative to neutral about the film. I do believe the average at the time of this recording is about 61% for the critic score. But for the audience, it is a 92% rating. And that is from over 1,000 verified reviews on the website. Do you agree or disagree with either side of those? Do you think the critics have a point in some of their reviews that it was not as big of a hit, or do you think the critics are blind?
The critics got it wrong because they're trying to bring it from to a newer audience compared to like 10 years ago. Okay, the Me Too movement wasn't as big as it is today, and the critics are like they're going in an old direction. It, the pandemic, hello, you can't get everything right during a pandemic. There's risks, but when they say they went to the old way, that's what I think of a critic like saying, "Eh, it's trash."
So I think when it comes to the critics that were looking at the film, I know that a good portion of them liked the film, but I also read that a few of them actually compared it to another film that had a similar storyline to Marry Me, and that is a 1999 film called Notting Hill, which is a romance comedy featuring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, which is when in the story Julia Roberts' character is a famous American actress, and she appears in the bookshop owned by Hugh Grant's character, William Thacker, and romance kind of blossoms over what I do hereby quote, is a close encounter over spilled orange juice. So I think it's a little bit unfair to have to compare to a past film because this is a new way of telling an old story. Man meets girl, girl falls in love with man, or in this case, decides to do something drastic, does something that is out of the ordinary. They come together, they're uncertain of one another, they try to find connections. So I do believe that the critics' review are a little bit skewed. Um, it's a romance comedy with a little bit of drama in there, but I do believe that the audience got it right. It is a very enjoyable film. You will love the music. I just think that the critics just aren't being fair to the fact that it's new. Don't compare it with something in the past. It's a new story. It came from a web comic, for crying out loud. You're talking about taking a story that was originally on the internet, it was a graphic novel on the internet, and boom, it got landed on the silver screen. Show me another web comic that has done that. Answer: Zippo.
Exactly, it's groundbreaking.
And speaking groundbreaking, we must talk about the Billboard and the Oscars, as you mentioned before. Now, what does you said? I think earlier that you were asking why was it not on the billboards?
Exactly. I mean, billboards. I know they don't put a lot of soundtracks on the billboards, but come on, billboards. Make a new category. Not your standard country, pop, rock, you name it. Come up with another category for like soundtracks. Even though some songs, like for an example, um, Armageddon. One of the songs from Armageddon was sang by Aerosmith. Come on, that was on the billboards. How many years ago was that? Over 10 years?
I think
Come on.
if we're talking about Armageddon, that was like what 1999. So we're looking at
Yeah.
over 20 years ago.
And from them to come from there to not having Jennifer Lopez?
Well, I would like to. I'm sorry to stop you for just a moment, but I would like to make a small correction, if I may. Billboard does have a soundtrack section where they actually look at soundtracks of films and TV, and they actually do grade them. What we're thinking about is that we're looking at the actual like Billboard Top 100, where they're looking at the songs themselves. Now, "Marry Me" and "On My Way" haven't even broken onto the Billboard Top 100 last I checked. But I can tell you that in regards to the soundtrack, where you look at the soundtrack as a whole, "Marry Me" is actually sitting at number 9 currently on the Billboard Top 10 for soundtracks. Unfortunately, it's not going to climb up any higher right now because the top, at least half of the top 8 spots above it, are for Disney films and animated films. Moana, Sing 2, Encanto, and Frozen 2. Plus Frozen the song. So 5 tracks within the top 8 are all basically sitting pretty with Disney. Encanto is actually 9 weeks at number 1 for the soundtrack.
And I can guarantee you for 2 songs. Well, at least one for sure.
Since we talk about billboards, let's talk about Oscars. Now, because of its timing, I know that it's going to be eligible potentially if it gets put forward to the Academy. It'll be eligible for the Oscars next year. So the question becomes, what do we see being, what categories do we see elements of "Marry Me" being nominated in?
Do you want to start off or should I?
How about you?
Okay, thank you. Best Actress, Jennifer Lopez. Best best song, or however you want to call it.
It'll be best song if it's a song.
Uh, Best lyrics.
No, it'll be best song. What will be the best song nomination for you?
On My Way is my opinion.
And the reason behind it?
It's like I said earlier in this stream. It is one moving forward, more of a breakthrough moment, in my opinion, for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a home run.
Kind of like someone breaking out of their shell.
Correct.
Someone who was confined for so long, them just suddenly breaking out. Best Actress, I think it's a little bit early to consider Jennifer Lopez in the running for Best Actress. It's only just now beginning March, and we still have a large number of big films that are getting a lot of hype for being released. I do believe that Jennifer Lopez, if she was put forward for the Oscar nominations, has an opportunity, but she will have stiff competition. In regards to your choice of best song, I definitely agree. I think On My Way will be a great choice for the Oscar noms. But we also have to consider Marry Me, which is what the entire movie is focused on. Another category which I think should be considered for this film is adapted screenplay for a writing Oscar. I mean, it's hard to adapt books to film. I mean, we've had big successes like the original Chronicles of Narnia, all six Lord of the Rings films, the entire Harry Potter franchise. But for the most part, there have been challenges in bringing the essence of a book or even a comic to the silver screen. Marry Me was a webcomic and it came to the silver screen and it was done wonderfully with the writing. They kept to the original essence of the characters when they were writing them, and even though they changed portions of it, the overall story didn't really change.
I agree.
Alright. Now, as we have been discussing about Marry Me, we must also think, what would we rate the films? So when I think about Marry Me, I like to consider the fact that it made history by being the first webcomic, American webcomic, to be made into a feature-length film. Bobby Crosby had an excellent story in his not graphic novel that was converted into a movie that had a great cast and kept the story true to its original content with very little changes. I do feel that there was a bit missing in regards to some of the character interactions when looking at the original content, but overall, the realism of the story as well as the music and score does make up for it.
Completely agree with you on that.
Anything else that you would like to add your opinion on it?
What you said is what I was going to say.
All right. Well, in that case, Janeway, how would you rate the film?
4.5 out of 5.
I am going to be very close to you. As I said, it definitely climbed the mountain. It didn't quite get to the top, but it was dang close. I am going to have to give it a 4 out of 5. Hello everyone, this is Ace.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Janeway.
And thank you for joining us for a dual review of Marry Me on Ace's Media Mayhem.
Make sure you join me and Ace for more dual reviews on Ace's show, Ace's Media Mayhem, and also take a quick look at some of his box office predictions to see how far he goes in his current streak of predictions.